Reimagining Success, episode 206. You're listening to the Reimagining Success podcast, where we help you design a business and a life that allows you freedom from the 9 to 5. I'm your host, Anna Lundberg, ex-corporate good girl, now a business mentor and coach, author, mum of 2, and I'm here to help you create more freedom, flexibility, and fulfillment. Now let's get started with redefining success outside of the 9 to 5. Okay, hello everybody and welcome back to the latest Escaping the 9 to 5 interview. And I'm here with somebody whose story is very familiar to me and I'm sure familiar to many of you as well. So looking forward to digging into her transition and what she's building for herself now outside of the 9 to 5. So I'm here with Jo Jackson. Welcome, Jo.
Hi, Anna. Great to be here. Thanks so much for welcoming me onto your podcast today.
Thank you in advance for your time and your openness and sharing your story. It's so valuable for people, and I always selfishly really enjoy these myself as well. So I'm really grateful to you. So why don't you tell us already, what were you doing before and what are you doing now?
Yeah, of course, no problem at all. So, I started my career, I suppose, spent the last 15 years of my career very much in the corporate world. So focusing in on the commercial side of all things corporate. So working for big brands, the likes of Mars, the likes of Johnson & Johnson, most recently as well in Boots and Kraft Foods, really launching, delivering great commercial plans, working with some of the biggest retailers in the UK to deliver those commercial kind of propositions. So very much in that relationship management, building great deliveries, great activations in store, those sorts of things. And I worked up through the ranks into the sort of commercial director type role. So leading teams, landing big negotiations, really very much in that space of owning great relationships with customers in a way that delivers sort of mutual value. So as I say, sort of started my career way back when, sort of 15 years ago, as a graduate, went through the different program, learned so much as I was going through my career, and then most recently was digital director at Mars. And then, what I'm doing now. So as of August of last year, I pivoted my career. So I left the big world of corporate and I've taken the opportunity to restart or set up my own business, Pivotal Moments, as an executive coach. So there are 2 elements of my business. One is my executive coaching, my one-to-one executive coaching. And then I also do some associate work where I support an organisation to facilitate sales and negotiation training, which is obviously very much based on my personal experience and, using my wheelhouse, if you like, in terms of what I've learned over the years and supporting other people to deliver great results for themselves. So a bit of a change, but actually, really looking forward to sort of sharing with you a little bit about the reasons why that happened and how it's going.
And with a business name like that, Pivotal Moments, you have to tell us, what was the pivotal moment for you?
Yeah, absolutely. So Pivotal Moments, the name of my business actually came about because those were the words that I was using when I was going through my own pivotal moment. So it's really interesting. I hadn't realised they were the words I was using until I spoke to my coach and she was like, hold on a second, Jo, do you realise this? I was like, oh my God, that's my business name. Thank you. That's perfect. So it was one of those massive aha moments. I was like, okay, brilliant. Let's go with that. So my pivotal moment, yeah, absolutely. I suppose there are 2 things that kind of came together, probably late 2019, early 2020. And it was very much a space of my professional and personal lives, really sort of everything happened at the same time. And I really wanted to sort of change things up. So from a sort of professional life point of view, as I mentioned, I climbed the ladder through various big multinational organizations, worked with some amazing businesses, some amazing people. And, I'd really got to a place that I probably never thought I was going to get to. So I was really proud of kind of the progression that I delivered and, the success that I'd achieved. But I kind of started looking at, okay, well, what's next? From if I was to want to progress further, I might have had to, for example, relocate. Actually, I'm a real home bird. So I really wanted to make sure that I was staying in the local area with my family and friends. Didn't want to be moving to, Zurich or wherever it might have been. But also I was thinking, actually, do you know what? I don't sense that those bigger roles, those, big, heavy hitting sort of C-suite type roles would give me the same level of mojo that I was getting previously in my more junior career. And I was kind of looking up, at these next potential roles, thinking, there's something about that doesn't sit right. Am I okay with maybe either relocating or being away from home loads? Am I okay with the extra pressure, with, the extra anxiety maybe that would come with those sorts of roles? And I was thinking, actually, something doesn't really fit as far as that goes. And then the other thing that was going on professionally was also there were a lot of changes, sort of structural changes going on in the business. So where I'd always been, and I don't like even saying this, it feels really uncomfortable, but where I'd always been classed as a high achiever, classed as top talent in the organisation, actually my trajectory was slowing. So where I'd gone really fast out the blocks, coming, graduate scheme all the way through, classed as top talent all the way through, 12, 13 years in, naturally your progression slows. So actually that started to become a little bit of an uncomfortable place for me, because one of my biggest values is around achievement. And I didn't feel like I was achieving as much because I didn't have the sort of the visibility of those achievements as much as I had in my more junior career. So that started to knock my confidence a little bit. They also say as you become a leader, it becomes more lonely, and that makes you feel more vulnerable. And I definitely felt that is where you go from having, a peer group of people who are very like-minded, you can share ideas, you can have those little rants, moans, coffee machine chats to share your thoughts and feelings. Actually, those become fewer and further between because you're leading teams now. You're demonstrating what's expected. You have to hold some confidences and those sorts of things. So actually, I felt like I'd lost a sense of me in that because I didn't have that sense of kind of teamwork and community around me as much. And then there were some restructures, there were some changes, business became even more difficult. There's some big challenges out there in the FMCG, the fast moving consumer goods marketplace. And it was all feeling quite challenging. I wasn't getting those same results. I didn't feel as I was getting those same results as I had previously. And the impact of that was it really knocked my confidence. So where, that progression wasn't coming through as quickly, maybe, where those results weren't coming through as easily, where maybe that kind of element of loneliness, if you like, or vulnerability in those more senior positions coming through, it really started to impact on my self-belief and my confidence. So actually then started becoming a bit of a sort of self-fulfilling prophecy, if you like. Lacking in confidence means you don't feel as though you can make great decisions. So then you start prevaricating a little bit and you start second guessing yourself and all those sorts of things. So it kind of becomes a little bit of a downward spiral. And I just really felt as though I'd lost my mojo in that space. Teamed with my sort of personal dynamics that were going on. So I got married in 2018, and unfortunately just before lockdown, my husband said he wanted to leave and we were getting divorced. And I think that in conjunction with lockdown and, all things COVID as we've all had to sort of survive through, made me really reassess life in general. I had on paper, I had every trapping of success. I had the great career, I was married, I had a beautiful home, had a brilliant social life and all those sorts of things. And then all of a sudden, everything felt like it was stripped away. Mm-hmm. Some of it out of my own choice, some of it done to me, but in the context of the global pandemic, where actually we all had a lot more time to think about ourselves, our lives, what was going on, and so on. And so really, for me, that became my pivotal moment. It was very much, I'm at rock bottom. From a professional point of view, which is something that's always been really important to me, I've lost my mojo, I've lost my confidence, I'm really not sure where this is going. And from a personal point of view, everything that I've held dear has all of a sudden, the foundations have been wobbled. And so it was like, okay, come on, Joanna, what are you going to do about this? And it was at that point in time, I was like, I need to work with a coach. I need to understand what's important to me. I need to get to know me again. And then I can start building a plan moving forwards. And basically, that's exactly what I did.
So it sounds like both internal and external forces, as you said, both personal and professional. It's really interesting because that idea of kind of looking up the ladder ahead of you to see, actually, I don't want to progress into those roles. That's really interesting because that's when it's really important moment, as you did, to begin to look elsewhere. Like, actually, I'm working really hard, but for what? Do I want to get to that next rung? Actually not. And as you know, and hopefully as you, the listeners, know as well, I talk about the 5 pillars of building a life outside the 9 to 5. The first one, I'm already hearing you say, is defining what success means to you. So shared a little bit, but how do you feel that your definition has evolved. So you were working towards these, as you said, traditional trappings of success. Was that an intentional choice, do you think? Or was that more just kind of subconsciously, you were just kind of on the conveyor belt of doing what we're supposed to be doing in society?
Yeah. This is a really interesting point. So success is something that I work with a lot of my clients on, actually, in the one-to-one coaching space. And from a personal point of view, I definitely was on the conveyor belt, as you described it. I think it's a really nice wording. I think a lot of our sort of generation, so I'm mid-30s, I think a lot of our generation have been very much encouraged to think, okay, A-levels, degree, graduate job, progressing up the career ladder. When are you going to get manager in your title? When are you going to get director in your title? Whatever it might be. And it almost feels as if there's this sort of consistent focus on what's next, constantly looking forwards, almost not accepting that what you've got now is good enough, always looking for that next thing, really thinking about ambition being, so important. Don't get me wrong, I'm a hugely ambitious person, but sometimes you also have to accept that what you've got now is really good, acknowledge what you've got at the moment. And I think, I absolutely used to define success by my job title, by where I sat in the hierarchy, by my salary, by the holidays I could go on, which was funded by my salary, and so on. Those more sort of traditional, almost external markings of success, almost those things that someone could look at you and be like, okay, here's the tick box of 5 things. Yeah, tick. These are the sort of the epitome of success. I think, however, when I was working with my coach and when I went through this pivotal moment in my life, I started to realize that actually I can define success in a completely different way. And it might mean that I still get to a great income. It might mean that I still live in a beautiful home. It might mean that I still have great holidays, but actually I'm not doing it for those reasons. What I'm doing it is the reasons I'm defining my success in a different way is because actually if I can do it in a way that gives me sense of passion, sense of purpose, sense of comfort, but also a sense of ambition and pride, then those other things will follow. If that makes sense. So it's not about trying to chase the dream of the house, the car, the salary, the hierarchy level. It's more about, okay, am I doing something that's purposeful? Am I doing something that's worthwhile? Am I doing something that I'm passionate about? Am I doing something where I'm having an impact? Am I doing something where my work-life balance works for me? Am I doing something where I feel free because I'm in control of my own time? Am I doing something where I'm meeting more people, where I'm consistently learning? All of a sudden, I started realizing that almost the input metrics of what success means to me were very different. The output metrics might be similar, but actually the input metrics were quite different. And actually, I used to say, I don't want to sell my soul anymore. And I really felt like that. And it's interesting because some of my clients use versions of those words with me. I think we can get stuck in the conveyor belt of life. And we think the only way to achieve those ambitions, those sort of external validations of success is to follow this particular model. But actually, I've realized, and I'm still learning, that that's not the case. But actually, if you go in with it with the right input metrics of what's my passion, what's my purpose, what impact do I want to have, how do I want to manage my life with a life balance that works for me, then that's a much more deep and meaningful version of success, in my view.
It's so interesting because, as you say, in a way it's quite subtle and it's internal, so maybe the outward bound metrics are the same and other people can't even tell that you made the shift, but it's so foundational. I don't know if you've come across Danielle Laporte's Core Desired Feelings, because what I'm hearing you say is a lot of that. So she talks about, instead of having what she would say is quite masculine energy goals of I want to have a big house and I want to have this job and so on, it's about, well, no, I want to feel grounded, I want to feel secure, or I want to feel free, I want to feel alive. And these feelings might be achieved through some of those external things like having a house. But a house, for example, can be, wow, I feel grounded and I feel like I'm belonging and so on, but it can also be I feel trapped and so on because suddenly I'm in this mortgage and I can't, and so on. So the feeling I heard you say was really important. And another piece was your values. So it's of course something we do a lot in coaching, get clear on our values. You mentioned that achieving was one of your values. Would you say that's still one of your values, or have you reframed that a little bit in this process?
Yeah, so I think it's really interesting because values is something that I don't think any of us really know. It's a very subconscious concept, and yet our values are what drives us. They're what what makes us feel happy or complete or fulfilled or what have you. And yet most of us are not aware of what our values are. So that was one of the great things I did, was actually working out what my values are. So in terms of achievement, absolutely, achievement, ambition, they're still very important to me in terms of my values. But actually, the way I've defined achievement is different from how I used to define it. So where achievement may well have been about, level in the organization or getting to a director level title, now it's more about what's the impact I'm having on other people, for example. And so I think your value set is intrinsic to you. It might tweak slightly over time, but the lens within which you look at it can actually evolve quite significantly. And I think that's what's a really interesting dynamic. One thing that's really important to me is community. So having that sense of team. Well, ironically, I now work on my own, but actually I'm working with people who are very like-minded individuals. I'm opening up my network to people who are very much more like me and finding my sort of people, if that makes sense. People who are in this learning and development space, these people who are very emotionally aware, people who are very supportive and naturally inquisitive as well. That's what coaches are, sort of naturally and intrinsically. And so my community, where it used to be about my team and supporting my team to be the best version of themselves, I'm now actually on my own, but my sense of community is coming in a different way. So I think it's really interesting. My value is still community, but actually the lens within which I look at it is different.
Yeah, and it's a more creative way, I guess, of achieving it. And as you said, I love the concept of the lens, because you're looking at it through, in a different way. And that's really powerful. Again, quite subtle, but can really shift things. And the way that you can achieve it is still possible, but in a different way that you were doing before. And you also talked about this, the career ladder, and of course is that metaphor we always use, and it's very clear, sort of the next rung is, of course, after that I'm going to be manager, and then there's that step, and then your boss says this is what you do, and so on. How are you, and my second pillar is building the confidence and resilience to deal with the inevitable ups and downs. So how are you finding that? Of course, you're relatively new and fresh, as we said at the beginning of the journey, but how are you finding that? It's exhilarating, but it can also be scary. So how are you navigating those ups and downs?
I think that's a really important point. It is exhilarating. And generally 80% of the time, if people say to me, how are you getting on? I'm like, oh my God, I'm loving it. It's amazing. There is 20% of me, or some days even more, where it's like, oh God, hold on tight. Let's hope this is going to be okay. So in terms of building my confidence, I think the biggest thing that I have realized is, because community is such an important value of mine, having those support networks around me is really important. So from a professional point of view, I've got my cheerleaders, my family, my friends, all really encouraging me, willing me forwards, sharing my posts on LinkedIn and Instagram, really, applauding those moments where I'm like, I need to celebrate this because I've just landed X client, or I've just, completed my qualification, or I've now got my accreditation with the EMCC, whatever those moments are, where it's like, oh, let's have a little glass of fizz to celebrate. I've got those sort of personal kind of reinforcement or support network. But critically, what I've realized is that the benefit of having a kind of professional support network is really important. So I'm a member of a business lounge where there's loads of like-minded individuals. We set our intentions for the week. We then sort of cheer each other on. We encourage each other, and we also push each other. So it's like, have you thought about this? Have you had the opportunity to consider X? Or I've noticed such and such about what you've sent out, or whatever it might be. Something, I think when you're working for yourself, it's important to have that community of people around you to build you that confidence, give you that encouragement that you need, but also to encourage you to go further, to keep challenging you, to hold that mirror up sometimes. I think that's really, really important. I think the second thing from a confidence point of view, and I'm really bad at this, is actually acknowledging how far you've come. So I have a massive hurry up driver. I'm always on to the next. I'm always thinking about what's coming next. I've got all these ideas. I've got a massive whiteboard on my office wall thinking about all these different things that could potentially, build my business over time. But I do have to make sure that I stop every now and then and do a little reflect. I'm really proud of how that went, or look at that client that I've landed, or look how far that client's come from X to Y, or look at that amazing feedback I've had. Those moments where historically I probably would have just sort of moved forward and forgotten about it. I'm actually really trying to take my own advice, to be honest, and take a moment to stop and reflect. And one of the ways I do that is I have a monthly meeting with my dad, who's my company secretary, who keeps me all my admin sorted. And I actually agenda, okay, what's gone well this month? What have I done? I'm really pleased with, because otherwise I wouldn't do it, because I'd always be looking further forwards. So acknowledging results for me has definitely been something that I've been working on, but it's really important to actually close the loop on some of this stuff. Otherwise you constantly feel like you're moving forwards.
Yeah. And I think that's a struggle. I see it again and again in clients, and I tell my clients to celebrate, and I'm so bad at it myself. And that's it. Seeing how, if you really looked at where you were a year ago, and for me, I'd never even heard of podcasts and Zoom probably 7-8 years ago. It's ridiculous. And websites and all these things. So if you can just look back and see how far you've come, and like that Instagram meme is, if the you from a year ago would be so impressed with where you are right now, right? So that's so important. And having, as you said, the support network, so key, cheerleaders, accountability, challenging, all those different types of support, so important. So that's really valuable, and so great that you have those in place.
Yeah, totally.
And you mentioned a little bit about choosing your business model, which is the third pillar, really getting that in place. And I think you said before we got on recording, you talked about a 3-legged stool. So I love this idea. Can you tell us a little bit more about how you're putting that in place, and how you're thinking about a viable business model that's really going to give you the long-term sustainable business?
Yeah, absolutely. So I had a really great conversation with a mentor of mine probably 2 or 3 years ago. When I started having the niggle, is how I describe it, that kind of, what's next? I kind of always toyed around the edges of what is my future going to look like if it's not in this sort of corporate model. Everything from wedding planning to God knows what. I've looked at it all. But I had a conversation, and he said to me, and it's probably the single biggest, most impactful piece of advice I had in the practicalities, if you like, of setting up a business from being in the corporate world. He said to me, think about your business like a 3-legged stool. Think about having different elements of your business, almost creating like a portfolio business, so that you're not putting all your eggs in one basket, effectively. So I've probably got a 2-legged stool, maybe a 2.5-legged stool at the moment. My one-to-one executive coaching, most of which is B2C, business to consumer. So me working with individual clients who approach me via LinkedIn or my website, for example. I also have some element of coaching where I work with organizations who, invest in coaching on behalf of their individuals. So still in the coaching space, but more of a B2B type model. And then, as I mentioned, I've got this third leg of my stool, if you like, which is the training and facilitation in the world of sales and negotiation, which is absolutely amazing. It's associate work on behalf of an organization. Still in the realm of coaching, still in the realm of helping people to unlock their potential, which is absolutely my mission and purpose, but a slightly different lens on it, really using that sort of wheelhouse of my experience, those 15 years in that commercial corporate world, that, where I've learned had loads of experience, probably, I can't imagine the number of conversations I've had with customers, so actually bringing that to life and helping other people to accelerate their career in that space as well. And what I want to do with these 3 legs of this stool, these 2.5 legs of this stool, is work out which are the bits that are actually going to accelerate further. So, it's by no means a sort of 50-50 split. Am I comfortable with that split? After year 1, what is the appropriate split that I want it to be? And the lens that I'll look at that through is not necessarily just the revenue lens, but it's also going to be the passion lens. The reason I've set up on my own as a self-employed person is because I want to be doing something that's in line with my mission, my purpose, my passions. And so it's really important to me that I love what I do, and that I get that buzz, and that I've got my mojo, and I'm really enjoying and getting a sense of satisfaction that I want from that. So it's very much a starting point. I'm only a few months into this kind of journey of mine with my Pivotal Moments business. But this idea of 3-legged stool is really something that I'm holding on to, because it's giving me that opportunity to have that portfolio approach, but at the same time to give me the opportunity to work out actually, where do I want to accelerate? Which are the bits that I want to really push forward on? So
I love that. It's such a sound approach. I'm such a fan of the portfolio career idea anyway. I think it really ticks a lot of boxes, as it were, for so many of us who have so many interests and we want to do a lot of things. And as you said, it's such a shame to turn our backs on a successful career, because I, like you, I didn't hate my job. I certainly, I went through a bit of a rebellious phase when I was a bit like, oh, corporate and so on. But actually, I loved, just like you, I loved what I'd learned, incredible opportunities, people, and so on. And it's so powerful to take that with you, even if it's just a temporary transition, and maybe in the future you move away from that. But the fact that you have that as a pretty sort of low-hanging fruit, as we'd call it back in my corporate days. But then also you're adding new streams of the one-to-one coaching, maybe a combination with the coaching with the corporates and so on. And that's such a powerful combination. And ironically, it's more diversified and secure than that one single salary that we always used to cling on to, thinking that we have this one stable job that's going to give us the safe pension and so on. So it's
has been a real mindset shift, is this idea of, going in and having the sort of scope of the career and, having the pay packet at the end of the month and so on. It's very much a sort of, as you say, it's one box of sort of approach. Actually, this idea of having a portfolio of different things going on, it really opens up your mind to this possibility of sort of freedom. It's so much more, the opportunities are so much broader, I think.
Yeah.
And whilst that is really exciting in the main, it can kind of give you a few wobbles, but it does give you that opportunity to make those choices, which is brilliant. My three-legged stool will probably evolve over the next 18 months. It will. It won't, not probably. It will evolve depending on what happens. Probably extra legs will come onto the stool.
Yeah.
Maybe other parts of it will change. And actually, what's amazing about that is that I can choose to do that. That's totally and utterly in my gift to make those decisions.
That's what, again, it's kind of scary, but it's also so exciting. Before, yes, it was quite nice to have a salary regardless of how much effort you put in. And let's be honest, as high achievers, we put in a lot of effort, and there's then a ceiling of how much we can earn, actually. Yeah. Whereas now, if you want to do an extra workshop, you want to contact an extra 10 companies, you want to take on 3 more clients, that's completely open to you, right? Likewise, of course, you can take a step back as well. So you mentioned there people are approaching you on LinkedIn, for example. So how have you been building? That's the 4th pillar. How have you been building your personal brand? Some of it sounds like obviously you're leveraging existing and past experience and network, but how are you finding sort of shifting in this new direction and adding the new legs of the stool to your brand?
Yeah. So I think when I think about the idea of creating a personal brand as a salesperson, historically, that doesn't sit comfortably with me. It almost doesn't feel like I have been doing that. But then I have been reflecting and listening back to your previous podcast about what you mean by the concept of personal brand. And I think the first thing that I've realized I've done, albeit maybe subconsciously rather than overtly, is really tapping into my purpose. So one of the biggest things I wanted to get to grips with. So authenticity is another one of my values. So being true to me and operating in an authentic, open, transparent way is really important to me. And linked with that, then getting really clear on my why. So massive fan of Simon's. For anyone who's not read it, listen to it. A brilliant podcast on sort of getting to your why. My big thing for me is I want to help people to get unstuck. So help them to lead fulfilling lives on their terms. And that could be anything from, one-to-one executive coaching where they've lost their confidence, or it could be supporting some national account managers who are wanting to, accelerate their sales career. Underneath that banner, that umbrella, if you like, of helping people to maximize their potential, finding fulfillment on their terms, there are so many different levers that I could potentially pull. And so I constantly check myself, is everything I'm doing in service of that overarching purpose, if you like, of helping people to realize their potential and find fulfillment on their terms? That's absolutely what I want to be known for. And everything I want to do, I want to be in service of that particular purpose, if you like. So I think that's the first thing is being really true to that. I think the second thing that's really important to me is that every interaction that people have with me, I want them to feel me. So, I want them to experience Joe Jackson in reality. I don't want to feel as though I'm putting on a facade. I don't want to feel as though I'm operating in a way that I should be doing. I think sometimes in big organizations, you can kind of lose that sense of individuality sometimes. I think you can kind of maybe feel like you're being molded into a certain approach, or maybe you have to check what you say, or maybe you have to approach things in a politically sensitive way because so and so wants you to say such and such. And I think what's really important to me is that sense of authenticity. And that therefore I really hope that my clients and people who I work with have that sense of the real me, the real experience of me as a person. What's all, I'll be really open about what's going on in my personal life. I'll be really open about the trials and tribulations, but the good stuff as well. And I think that's what's really important, is that this isn't a shiny, perfect persona of Jo Jackson. This is the real Jo Jackson. And I hope that helps me make me more relatable, because I think that's when you can get a great connection with somebody, which then means you can help them to realize their potential, to unlock whatever it is that they need to build that life that's fulfilling on their terms.
I love it. And that's exactly, and thank you so much for listening and to get an understanding of how I see the personal brand, because it can feel quite icky. And it's funny that you come from a sales background and yet still found it a bit of a foreign concept, but that's exactly it. It's the big picture why of what you want to stand for, but then also bringing that to life in the day-to-day, in every conversation, every interaction. And it sounds like you're allowing that to give you the breadth to experiment and so on. But again, it's a lens through which you're looking at projects and clients and so on to make sure it's all speaking to that. So I hope people can see how powerful that is, and also how flexible it is. It kind of gives you a framework without being too beholden to no, this is what you have to do and so on. So the final pillar is designing effective work-life integration, or flexible work-life integration. So how are you finding that in terms of setting boundaries, prioritizing your time and energy? You said you're working, of course, a lot by yourself. So how are you fulfilling that need for community and so on? How are you integrating or not work and life?
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I think the first thing I'll say is that one thing I have noticed is, again, going back to my values, community is hugely important to me. I have noticed sitting in my third bedroom with a laptop and a Zoom call and all those sorts of things doesn't necessarily nourish me as much as sitting in an office might, or going, meeting clients face to face. So one of the things I've really put in place is actually making sure that on those days where I'm not having one-to-one client conversations, maybe when I'm doing work on the business rather than in the business, or maybe where I'm producing content or those sorts of things, I'm actually doing that in an environment where there's a bit of bustle around me. So whether that's the health club, whether that's the local library, whether that's the local cafe, whatever it might be, I find that just by being around other people, I get topped up from an energy point of view. I'm very much an extrovert. So I have realized that I need to mix that up for me. And, I notice when my energy levels are waning, and then I need to get out. I need to go and be in an environment where there's energy around me, so I can, find my mojo back on that particular day. So that's the first thing. I think the second thing, in terms of boundaries, this is a really interesting one. So from a boundaries point of view, I've said to myself, first things first, I want Friday afternoons for me. So I don't want to have anything after 1:00 on a Friday afternoon. It's really important to me because I want to know that I've got time to go and have my hair done, or I've got time to go and meet the girls for an early doors, for a drink, or I can go and travel to wherever I'm going to for the weekend, or whatever it might be. It's like, actually, this is my time for me. It's protected me time, if you like. And I'm quite proud of myself. I've actually pretty much stuck to that, I'd say 98% of the time so far. So that's good. And then the other thing I've also tried to do is I'm trying to protect my time in the morning. So I am not a natural gym bunny, but I know that exercise really helps me, but I have to get it done in the morning. So one of the other things I'm doing is I'm not having any client-facing time before 9:30 in the morning. That means that I can get up at, not at a horrible o'clock, because I'm a massive sleepaholic as well. It also means I can get to the gym, get my stuff done, get set up, ready for the day, and at 9:30, I'm then in a really good mindset to be in my best self, to be able to give that to my clients as well. And I think what I've learned from that is actually protecting that time for me is really important, because that will give me the energy to be the best one-to-one coach I can be, to be the best, trainer or facilitator as well. And I think it really helps if I'm charged up properly, that I can then support people as I want to. But then I suppose as well, from an energy point of view, I've also noticed that sometimes I'm really in the mood to get into the zone, write a blog article. And it might be Sunday morning and I might be sat on the sofa with my feet up. But actually, if I've got an hour to do that, why not? So I kind of go a little bit where the energy takes me as well, which when I think about flexibility and freedom, that is so cool, it's so liberating. And the thing is, because I love what I do, it doesn't feel like work. It's like, oh, I want to write about such and such. Great, I'm in the mood for that. Let's get in the zone, get the AirPods in, get the tunes going, whatever it might be, and get on with it. But that means that on Wednesday afternoon, if I'm really struggling, let's go meet so-and-so for a walk, or let's go and do whatever. And really acknowledging where my energy is has helped me to sort of intertwine this work-life integration, if you like.
Yeah.
I'm not suggesting I've got it all nailed. I really haven't. But I definitely feel as though putting those few little bits in has helped me with the flexibility. When I was in the world of corporate, I felt very tethered to my laptop. And that's not the case anymore. I know where I'm at with everything. I know that I'm on top of everything. I know that probably I'm pushing myself to go even faster and harder. But actually, I'm not accountable to anyone else apart from me and my clients. And so I can do my work on a Sunday morning, or I can finish at lunchtime on a Wednesday if I'm struggling with my mojo. And that's okay, because I know that I trust myself to get it done, because it's all in service of my passion, my purpose, and helping other people. So,
I don't think any of us have it nailed, however long we've been in business or how we're starting, but it sounds like you're making a lot of very good choices there. I mean, the fact that you're setting up already, I like to think of a loose structure, right? And it's through that structure that you get the freedom. And then having the flexibility, as you say, to actually go where your energy is really important. I think we can go too far, and I have gone too far either way. If you go completely, I just want to go with the flow, fine. But probably that'll end up with you're not achieving the goals and you're not making the impact you want to make, and so on. But then if you're too rigid, then what's the point of having left the 9 to 5, because you haven't, you're just recreating that same cage or whatever you want to call it. So I think the combination, as you say, of blocking certain times, but Friday afternoons, really nice. And I think officers should do that, in fact, anyway. Knowing yourself, your own energy. I actually block the morning entirely up until I think it's 1 o'clock. I don't do any client calls because I want to then be able to work on my book and create content and whatever else. I also exercise first thing in the morning, but others, I'm sure, do it at lunch or in the evening or whatever, right? So really knowing your sleep needs and your energies, your priorities, your life situation. And again, that has evolved for me. Before I met my partner, I was working all over the place, literally physically and also in terms of time. Then he had more of a 9 to 5. So then I fell into Monday to Friday. Then he left his job, and then it's more flexible again. Then we've got the kids who are only in, nursery a couple of days a week and so on. So it really does evolve. So as you say, it will be a journey, but it sounds like, again, from my expert opinion, that you've really put in place some really good, what do they call those sort of guide rails almost? Guardrails. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So again, flexibility, but helping you to make the right choices, as it were. And not to feel guilt as well is so important, isn't it?
Exactly. It's not feeling guilty, but also I suppose it's as you say, it's guardrails. It's not necessarily a structure, but it's if something comes in terms of an opportunity and it means starting at 8 a.m. Okay, cool. I need to make an active choice then. Am I willing to do that? Probably yes, but it's not all the time. It's not being done to me. I have the opportunity to choose that rather than feeling like I have to or I should. Yeah. So I think it just holds that sort of space in my mind to be able to make those choices that work for me. Because at the end of the day, that's what I'm doing this for. It's to have the life, the balance, the fulfillment that I'm looking for.
And it is, as you say, creating that space, because it's so easy to go, oh my gosh, yes, I should, and I have to, and I want to, and then also going, hang on a second, and then making an empowered, informed decision that, yes, actually, the money is worth it, or the impact I'll make, or the client, or whatever it is. Or as you say, Sunday, I feel so inspired. I'd love to lie by the pool and write this blog post because I feel so inspired, and that doesn't feel like a drain to me because I actually love what I'm doing. So again, that's very familiar to me, and I'm sure to people listening as well. So with that in mind, where can we read more about Pivotal Moments and follow what you're up to, Jo?
Yeah, absolutely. So pivotalmoments.co.uk is my website with everything on there, from the one-to-one coaching piece, the capability development. Also, one of my blog posts is a bit more about my story. So if anyone wants to have a little nosy at that, then please do take the opportunity to do that. And sign up to the community as well. So every week I release, say, a newsletter or a blog post or something, events and so on and so forth. So it'd be great to, for people to join me in that space, definitely.
Amazing. Thank you. I will definitely link to that, your blog post with the story I was reading, as I said, just before we spoke, and it so resonates with my own experience. It's so, I'm sure, and I know, in fact, very much mirroring so many of my clients' experiences as well, and very much what we've talked about today. You even use the words of redefining success and so on. So I'm so glad to have met you, and want to thank you so much for giving your precious time and energy to us today to share your experience so far. And of course, I'd love to follow along and see how your journey progresses. So maybe we can reconnect in a while and see how you're getting on as well.
Absolutely. See what's changed. No, it's been an absolute
see
pleasure.
The next pivotal moment.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm sure there will be many,
absolutely,
as there are for all of us. Yeah.
And in fact, I think we said that, and you said that, I should say, before we came on as well. But Joe was talking about those different pivotal moments that come in life. And it's not just the one. I see some people talk about sort of the second stage of career or whatever, we talk about midlife crisis, but actually it can be it can be a personal thing like a divorce or something that triggers it. It can be having children. It can be a personal illness, but it could be many or several things along the way. And as we've been saying, it can be terrifying at first, but it can also be so exciting and empowering. We get to rebuild, reinvent, create something new and perhaps even better and certainly different to what we had before. So yes, here's to those future pivotal moments as well. As you said, I'm sure there'll be more for all of us. So thank you so much again, Joe. Thanks for coming on.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Anna. Thank you. Lovely to talk to you.
Thank you.
If you'd like to create your own transition story and escape the 9-to-5 to work for yourself, then come and join us over in the Business Incubator. This is a comprehensive online program and community designed to give you the roadmap that you need to help you figure out what you really want to do, come up with a workable plan, and take the right steps to achieve it. Read more and join us over on onestepoutside.com/9-to-5. That's onestepoutside.com/9-to-5.